there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. Today we're going to be talking about my top favorite eyeshadow palettes in my last video for eyeshadow palette week. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. Today is the last video in my April 2023 eyeshadow palette week. I hope you enjoyed it. I very much enjoyed filming these videos, and I've saved the best for last because I like to always do a little bit of an overview of like what eyeshadow palettes I think are like cream of the crop. These are the best of the bests. If I had to pick my top 10 favorite eyeshadow palettes from my collection, where it stands right now, these are my picks. And I've done videos like this in the past, so make sure to link a couple of those down below so that you can actually have a look at how my preferences have changed and how it's evolved over time. I still love older palettes as well, and I like going back to them, but for today's list, I wanted to make sure that these were still all available, at least for the most part, which is why I have one honorable mention. I couldn't help myself. But before we get into the video, it may be good to know that I have fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone, which greatly skews my makeup preferences. And because I've been buying, trying, and reviewing makeup for more than a decade, I have some strong opinions as well. And if you're here for eyeshadow palettes, essence, and couture reviews, and getting the use out of your makeup, then maybe this channel is for you. Click subscribe to join the Snow Angel family down below. So yes, today's video is my top 10 favorites, and I was going through my eyeshadow palette collection in preparation for this video, and I was pulling palettes to see what I liked, and I was like, I think this list has now gone through a major update. There are still a couple here that I've mentioned in previous years because, you know, a favorite is a favorite. It doesn't just disappear all of a sudden because it's an older palette. But I think I've definitely tried a couple of things in the past year that I was like, these are just so good. I want to put them on my all-time favorites list as well. And there are, of course, always older palettes that I like, which is why I need to reference a video I did at the start of the week. I did a video where I talk about my top 10 favorite discontinued eyeshadow palettes. I could very easily have done that in one video and like mentioned my favorite like ones you can still get and the ones that are no longer available. And just because something has disappeared from this list today doesn't necessarily mean that I don't like it anymore. Like, I decided to not put the Tartelette in Bloom on here because I've mentioned that palette so many times as being one of my favorites, and I still love it, but it's also one I haven't used in a bit. So then is it still a favorite? Like, I still really like it. It's definitely still up there for me. But if I had to select 10 palettes now, it didn't quite make the cut. Maybe if I'd done a top 15 or a top 20, it might have, but I wanted to make sure, like, really limit myself and challenge myself to only mention 10. But to reference that discontinued palette video, my honorable mention for this video, number 11, you could say, is the Melt Merte, because I feel till this day that the Melt Merte is quite unique in what it does and what it delivers, and this represents the grungy factor. Like, I've also gotten rid of most of like the very colorful things because I'm not really into wearing colorful makeup at the time, even though like in the past I featured some of my favorite rainbow palettes in this list as well. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to pick my 10 favorites. Like, if I had to pick 10 favorites today, this would be them, and this would definitely still be part of the list if it was still available. But that's why it already appeared in that video on Monday, so that's why I'm going to be not mentioning this one for too long. You can no longer get it. There are color stories on the market that look similar to this. The Nomad Verona palette that came out in February seems like it's taken some inspiration from the Melt Merte, but I still have to test it out, so I can't be sure, and I don't know whether I love it as much as my Muerte. So this list is in no particular order, because if I also had to rank these from like least favorite to most favorite, I think I would just wanna, too much brain space. So we're just gonna mention these as is, pick and choose from these what you like. And the first thing I need to mention is the Glam Shop Coco Sanka. Is this still for sale? Every single time I'm on their website, it's still there. I'm not sure if it still is, but I've been told more than a year ago, I already saw people saying that this was going to be discontinued. They are now doing a coffee collection. I think it came out in like the fall-winter season. That seems to be doing a similar thing. So if this is gone, I would recommend looking into one of those color stories, because Glam Shop does have a lot of color stories that look a little similar-ish sometimes. Like they discontinue something and then they bring something back that's nearly the same thing. But I don't own that, so I cannot really 100% say buy this one because it's very similar to Coco Sanka. However, Glam Shop is releasing some really interesting things again, so sometime this year I may just purchase one or two more of their palettes. But Coco Sanka, in case you don't know, I have compared this to the ColourPop That's Taupe a lot. And I think I've just taken a decision for myself that this is my preference over the That's Taupe. And not because the That's Taupe isn't good, but this just has a lot of things going for it that I'm sort of either missing about the That's Taupe or that just makes this a bit more appealing to me. So first of all, the color story itself. This is 5 shimmers, 4 mattes. I prefer a shimmer over a matte, so this is just a bit more stunning. You get this really cool duochrome in the middle. That's just life. The shimmer formula from Glam Shop is one of the best shimmer formulas I have ever tried. It's a bit flaky. You need to use a light hand. You need to be careful. And they can be a bit difficult to pick up with a brush because they're very creamy, but you can use them with fingers and they're fine. And you get 4 really stunning mattes, something that's light enough, something that's deep enough, so you get a lot of versatility out of these shades. But one of the reasons why I've just decided that this is just a bit better for me is because it's an EU-based indie brand. I don't have to pay for a lot of shipping and handling fees if I order this. Of course, if you're in the US, you're gonna have to pay for shipping and handling fees, but at least the tables are turned. For once, the tables are turned. But I love plenty of US-based indie brands as well. Case in point, Persona Cosmetics, the Identity palette. I decided to put the Identity palette on here over the Tartelette in Bloom. I know, controversial decision, but like I said, the Tartelette in Bloom I still love, but if this were a top 15, it would make an appearance, but I want it to be a bit more cutthroat. And then I don't know why, because I feel they do fit pretty similar things. Like I feel the Tartelette in Bloom is like warm, neutral, and cool all in one go. This also has warm, cool, and neutral all in one go. These 2 more taupey leaning shades are life. We get a pop of plum. You can pull this really warm and spicy if you go for these 2 shades. And then these 2 softer golds work really well. But if I think about these shades, I think the Persona Cosmetics just has a slightly better formula than the Tarte. Maybe it's because my Tartelette in Bloom is getting a bit old. I still like it. It still works really well for me, but the Tartelette in Bloom only has 3 shimmers. And this is 50-50 shimmers and mattes. So I like that a little bit better about this one. Plus, the Persona Identity 1 is formulated specifically with brown eyes in mind. And I've got brown eyes, so I feel that no matter what look I do with this palette, it always comes out. I love the formula. It's rich and creamy and blendable. The shimmers do all have a similar level of shimmer, I find. You don't get something that's super metallic or a bit more flaky, so you can really use it as toppers. It's just mattes and shimmers, and that's what we get, but it's a really good standard eyeshadow palette that you can get a lot of use out of. I mentioned the Myrte at the start for that grungy vibe, but I think that I actually like a more neutral tone grunge. And then the Fall Magic by Unearthly is, I think, my favorite palette I've tried in a long, long time. It's also a bit more warm toned, which may be good to know as well. So I do like a variety of shades, and this, it's just stunning. And if I want to go for that fall time grunge, this is the palette that springs to mind instantly because it's not overly colorful. A lot of grungy color stories tend to be very jewel toned, like the Melt Myrte, or they have some like almost brighter pops of orange. I'm thinking of like the Nomad Cosmetics Haunted Europe that I love for the fall time. So it's always just a little too far in the extremes. And that's one of the things I love about this palette, is that all of these shades are somehow muted. They are somewhere in the middle. Like this is not quite a brown, not quite a green, and it's not quite a gray. This is a green, but it has a bit of a blue undertone, and it works really well with these oranges as well, because it could pull a bit yellowish. These 2 as well have that yellowish undertone. This has a bit of a blue, but it can be a green. These like warmer purples work really, really well together. These like berry tones, stunning. And I love that we get these cooler toned, like taupey brown mattes. So this is just one of those like really good smack in the middle if you want to grunge it up, but you don't want it to be too intense. You don't want things to be too smoky. This is like the jewel tone palette or the grungy palette for neutral lovers. That's what I would describe this as, and I really enjoy the formula. I have a couple of Unearthly palettes, and I really enjoy them, but I think this is their best one. I'm not sure if they do it all the time, but they do bring things back in stock, so even if it's not around by now, because it's not necessarily the season for these kind of colors, I hope they bring it back for fall. And the instigator, why I am featuring quite a few palettes here that I haven't shown you before as part of these are my favorite palettes, is this guy. This instantly made it onto the list. I only tried it at the start of this year. I bought it towards the end of 2022, and it's the Glasgot's new Neutrals palette. This is another EU-based indie brand. Yes, they're based in Sweden. And this is still for sale for sure. I've shown you the Smoke and Mirrors this week as well, which I also love. But this new Neutrals palette, like, if you want good mattes that are really blendable and easy to work with, and an amazing shimmer formula that, oh, you can already see. So can you see that? That has shifty, not necessarily multi-chrome, but shifty shadows, but you want it to be neutral at the same time, and you don't want it to be like jewel toned or like, you know, green to blue flips and things like that. You want it to be a bit more toned down. This one. This entire row is more cool toned, and it's like cool toned taupes but with a green undertone. This entire row is a bit more warm toned, like if you look at this here, and then this is a bit more like smack in the neutral, in the middle neutral. So I feel that this is again like my replacement for something like a Tartelette in Bloom that I feel does like all of the different undertones in one palette. I was able to work with this really, really well. And for me, this was a really good smack in the middle neutral palette. It's stunning, really good quality. It goes deep enough, it goes light enough, it has all the shades you need. You get 2 really decent like crease shades, 3 if you want to do something a bit more warm toned. And you can just really use those mattes to anchor the look. But apart from 5 mattes, there are 7 shimmers in here, and some of them are these like super flaky, like Lamb Shop really, like super flaky things that you really need to pick up with a finger. But this one, and this one as well, they all have a green flip or undertone, making this so worth it. It's, if you want neutrals with a twist, this one. But where would we be without some of the classics? And of course I have to feature this. The Huda Beauty Rose Quartz. I have mentioned in the past how this, together with my Natasha Denona Retro, is like the replacement for, you know, some of the things I've liked a lot in the past, like the Urban Decay Naked 3, those kind of things. But I've just decided to just put this one in instead of also the Natasha Denona Retro. And that's because I have just been gravitating towards these really light, pale, sort of cool tone shades a lot more in the past year than I have the rich mauve tones that the Retro has. This is stunning. It's got a little bit of warmth. We get this corner. Like if you know anything about me, like that's just it for me. Like all I need are those shades and I'm happy, you know, save for like the weird putty shades, of course, in the middle. The pinks I like as well in here. They're not my personal like top favorite. But I do also like these like purpley tones. We get some neutrals. We get a lot of things we can mix and match with. And I love that this has textures. This has so many great textures to just play around with. And that's why I do really rate this one very highly. Sticking to things that I've mentioned before as part of my top 10 favorite eyeshadow palette list, Pat McGrath's Subliminal 1, the Mothership, the first Mothership that was ever released. And it's cool toned. And I don't understand, like she can do such good cool tone palettes, case in point, and she just doesn't do any others. She hasn't done one ever since. So this I think is a stunning palette. I really love it. I love that pop of blue. I love these 2 shades, even the gold that she insists on doing. Every single palette I don't hate in this one. And I love these like, yeah, satiny mattes that we get over here. Really stunning undertones. I love the formula of these. This mothership made me realize that the motherships are, you know, really, really good quality. More so than, I think the Divine Rose one. No, this is the first mothership I bought. Was it the first mothership I bought? I think so. And it was a good choice for sure. So Pat McGrath, Mothership 1, Subliminal, Liminal. If you get just one, make it this one. Really, really. Sticking to some original favorites, and I couldn't choose, so that's why you're getting 2 for 1, because I said there would be 10 palettes, but I'm sneaking in both of my favorite Viseart palettes for one spot. The Cashmere and the Violette Étendue. The Cashmere, because it's just one of the best neutral palettes in existence, like this thing. Oh, this is so stunning. This is warm, cool, and neutral, and a bit of rosy tones, all in one go. It is so, so stunning. Really, really good. And I really enjoy this one. So this has some really stunning shades. I love that shade in the middle. You can go like quads. You can do like 6 shades together. You can do any, like, you can create a look with any of these shades and it will always come out, which is why it had to get a mention. But Violette Étendue, I think that these palettes complement each other really well as well, which is why I wanted to give it a mention. But if we're going purples, this is my favorite purple palette. It's not overly purple though, because really the purples are only here, you could say, but this has a purpley undertone, you could say. These neutrals have a purpley undertone as well, which is why I really like it. And I think that this can give me some of the shades to, you know, deepen up the Huda Beauty Rose Quartz if these were the only 10 palettes I could keep. So Violette Étendue had to get a mention because I still love it. It's got a couple of really good shades, and I think that together with the Cashmere, that's a game changer for sure. But then moving on again to some things that were released in the past year, I really enjoy these little quads from Kaleidos. This is the Flowing Haze, which I do really like this, but I remember saying that I like this shimmer with the glowing iris, and then that shimmer in here a lot better. But I just really like these murky, sort of purpley, taupey sort of things that it's got going on. The Kaleidos quads are really, really good. I just picked one just to show you, but I could have shown you all 4. So the ones from both the Smoky Nostalgia, the Cold Brew, the Black Jasmine, and both of them from this collection that I forget the name of. It doesn't say on the back, it just says the name of the palette on the back here. But yeah, this is really good eyeshadow. And do you need all 4? No. But I do feel that the shimmer you get in each palette isn't necessarily the best shimmer to go with the mattes. And within the pairings, I've always felt that those had to be switched around. But I really enjoy the Kaleidos formula, and I'm really glad that they're doing these more curated color stories now. And then this next one may actually surprise you a little bit. Natasha Denona Retro Glam. Because I was going through my makeup collection, I was like, yeah, but if I take... Because I'm going to be reorganizing my Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes really soon. That's like still on my to film list for you guys. And then I was looking at like what shades I would keep from the glam and what shades I would keep from the retro glam and what I would want then in addition to it. And I think I'd actually get to this, the retro glam. Because we get some of those rosy tones, we get neutrals, we get the greens. The neutrals in here are very taupe leaning. And I think this, like from a color story perspective, I think this is the most exciting eyeshadow palette by Natasha Denona that I own. So I was like, you know what? It's a difficult one because I did rank my Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes for you this month, and this did not come out on top. The Glam did, and for me, I think the Glam is still my favorite Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes. But if I look at everything I have, like I didn't want to put in another like boring cool tone neutral palette. But I really enjoy the Natasha Denona formula. It's one of my favorite formulas for eyeshadow. But the color stories aren't always that exciting. And I was like, which color story from Natasha Denona then truly excites me? And then that's why I put this one in here. But I could have really swapped out any of my Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes here because I love all of them. But for now, this one gets to be in the list. And if you've been with me for the past couple of months, you know how much I ended up loving this guy. So I had to give it a mention again. There are still a couple of them left. I have found an EU-based website that ships internationally that still has a couple of these in stock. The Catrice Fallen colors. So you could potentially buy it. if you were interested. This is such a stunning neutral palette. And this is again another reason why, you know, the glam and the retro both don't have to be in here, because this has pretty similar shades. Like, we get like a retro glam kind of vibe, and this is more like Natasha Denona glam sort of vibes over here. This has neutrals, it's got warm tones, it's got rosy tones, it's got everything, and I felt that the quality was up to par with some of the high-end things I've got going on as well. This was my top pick for 2022. So it had to get a mention here. So those are my top 10 favorite eyeshadow palettes. I think there were a couple of surprises here for sure. But yeah, I think it's good to keep these lists like afresh and like updated. And who knows, maybe next year I revert back to some of my older palettes, and that's what I love the most. But I have been trying and going back to older palettes in recent months. And one of my favorite palettes, the Lorac Pro 3, was in my going back pile last month. And I just felt that formula-wise, even though I still like mine, I don't think I would still recommend that one necessarily. So that's why I definitely had to take that one off the list. And I therefore realized that perhaps the Tartelette in Bloom also had to be taken off the list. So there's a couple of like standard favorites that I feel have just sort of been like finally time has caught up with them and they are no longer the best of the best. And that's why I would opt for these ones. So let me know in a comment down below what your favorite palettes are. I would love to know. I have already mentioned in this video that I will be doing eyeshadow palette month in August, but I do regular videos about eyeshadow palettes on this channel anyway. About 4 or 5 times a month I talk about eyeshadow palettes. I always do a monthly review. I go back to older palettes. So if those are things you're interested in seeing, then definitely stay tuned. Subscribe if you'd like to see it, and I'll make sure to have as many links as I can in the description box down below so that if you were interested in buying some of these, that you could do that through an affiliate link. Of course, you're not obliged to do that, but it would help out the channel for sure. So thank you so very much for joining me today, and then I hope to see you again in my next video. Bye-bye!